如果专家都会认为说，贺锦丽应该会在辩论里头不会赢川普，而民众的投票却觉得贺锦丽会比川普好，这是代表现在贺锦丽的人气是高过于川普的，虽然他的 charisma 跟川普差一大截，所以反对川普，反对他重新回到白宫，反对他对美国民主宪政的一些角色，成为这一次很大的一个影响。而我们所看到的里头，其实很影响很大的是女性的选民。明天我们会为大家做出更多的一些相关的分析，但我们先来看这位在美国总统大选里头最权威的学者李奇曼，他依照几个不同的标准，然后就最后经过深思熟虑以后，预测贺锦丽会当选。在过去12次的美国总统大选，他只有1次有失误，可是那次的失误跟他无关，是跟佛罗里达州的那次改变投票方式是有关系的。他没有一次错。2016年他预测川普会当选，大家说他疯了，川普怎么可能当选？但他真的预测正确了。2020年他预测拜登会当选，也正确了。这次他预测是贺锦丽会当选。纽约时报特别把他的预测做成一个动画，那我们直接翻译给所有的人，很仔细的看李奇曼是根据什么样的方式，然后哪些怎么样加分，最后认定贺锦丽是会当选的。
There's a lot of hoopla about age these days.
But not for me.
See that guy in the red shirt? That's Alan Lichtman, 77-year-old Alan Lichtman. And he's racing in the qualifiers for the Senior Olympics. But there's another kind of race Alan's just as qualified for.
Alan Lichtman.
Alan Lichtman.
Professor Alan Lichtman, who has correctly predicted
almost every presidential election since 1984.
And today, Alan Lichtman's ready to tell us who's going to win in 2024. You see, you may think Alan's just a jock.
Well, I was a steeplechase champion in the 1970s.
His name is Dr. Alan Lichtman.
But he's actually kind of a nerd, a history professor, and a quiz show champion. These days, he's on a different kind of winning streak. To make his presidential predictions, Alan's model ignores the polls and the pundits.
It hinges on 13 keys that I developed in 1981 with my geophysicist friend, Vladimir Kailis-Borak. It's based on 120 years of presidential election outcomes before then.
Told you, he's a nerd. Alan's model was one of the few that called it for Trump in 2016.
Donald Trump is going to win.
And in 2020, Alan got it right again.
Trump will lose the White House.
The race was tight, but the keys were right.
So let's get to how these keys actually work.
They are 13 big picture, true, false questions that tap into the strength and performance of the White House party. And only 2 keys have anything to do with the candidates.
But Alan, 2024 is an unprecedented election year. Can your 13 keys really call it right?
The keys absolutely will work. They are the constant northern star of political prediction.
All right, time to run these keys and find out who will be the next president of the United States, according to Alan.
But first, let me change into something a little more comfortable.
Number 1, the White House party gained House seats between midterm elections.
The Democrats did better than expected in 2022, but they still lost House seats, so the key is false.
Remember, a false key is good for Trump. Number 2, the incumbency key. The sitting president is running for re-election.
Biden withdrew from the race, costing the Democrats this key. It is false.
Wait, you're saying it would have helped the Democrats if Biden stayed in?
If Biden stayed in, they would have salvaged this one key. That's all.
Okay. Moving on for now. Number 3, the White House party avoided a primary contest.
The Democrats finally got smart and united overwhelmingly behind Vice President Harris. So the key is true.
A true key. That moves Harris off the starting block. Number 4, there's no third-party challenger.
RFK Jr. has dropped out of the race, and no other third-party candidate is anywhere close to the 10% polling threshold needed to turn this key. It's true.
4 keys in, and it's neck and neck. Let's keep going. Number 5, the short-term economy is strong.
Look, despite all the loose talk about a so-called vibe session, the economy is not in recession, so this key is true.
Number 6, Long-term economic growth during this presidential term has been at least as good as the last two terms.
Growth during the Biden term is far ahead of growth during the previous two terms, so this key is clearly true.
Number 7, the White House has made major changes to national policy.
Rejoining the Paris Accords on climate change, the CHIPS bill, the infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction and Climate Change bill. Clearly, the key is true.
Number 8, there is no sustained social unrest during the term.
There have been sporadic protests, but nothing approaching the massive, sustained social unrest needed to turn this key. So it's true.
But schools are just going back to session. With new protests, couldn't this key flip?
Yes, there are a lot of protesters upset with Biden's policies in the Middle East. But now with Harris, not Biden, front and center, that has dampened social unrest.
Number 9, the White House is untainted by scandal.
Oh, my favorite key, the scandal key. And Republicans have been trying for years to pin a scandal on President Biden and come up empty. So the key is true.
But come on, Alan. Biden's horrific debate performance, questions about his age, Hunter Biden, doesn't any of that count?
No, there has to be at least some bipartisan recognition of actual corruption that implicates the president himself and not a family member. So the key remains true.
So 2 false and 7 true so far. Looking pretty good for the Democrats. We have 4 keys left, all of which would have to be false for Trump to have a path. Number 10, the incumbent party candidate is charismatic.
This is a very high threshold key. You have to be a once-in-a-generational, broadly inspirational candidate. Harris has not met that standard, so this key is false.
Number 11, the challenger is uncharismatic.
Some people think Donald Trump is a god, but he only appeals to a narrow base, so that key is true.
But wait, that means...
The Democrats will hold on to the White House, and Kamala Harris will be the next president of the United States.
But wait a sec, Alan. We still have 2 keys left. The foreign policy keys?
You're right. Foreign policy is tricky, and these keys could flip. The Biden administration is deeply invested in the war in Gaza, which is a humanitarian disaster with no end in sight. But even if both foreign policy keys flipped false, that would mean that there were only 5 negative keys, which would not be enough for Donald Trump to regain the White House.
So I guess that means you're standing by your prediction.
Kamala Harris will be the next president of the United States. At least that's my prediction for this race. But the outcome is up to you, so get out and vote.
Well, I guess that settles that race. But what about the one we started with?
Well, I won some medals, I didn't get hurt, and I qualified for the 2025 National Senior Olympics. Not bad for a 77-year-old, huh?